What's up, guys? Welcome to another Tuesday already. Another Tradesmen Talk. I know many of you have just been anticipating and super excited for the next call, and here we are.
You stayed up for 6 days in a row waiting for the next one. We're happy to let you sleep again.
Tonight, you can get some sleep. So, along with some sleep, we're also hoping to give you some value, some knowledge to help you grow your existing business or give you some inspiration and guidance on finally pulling the trigger with starting your business. Many of you watching this might have some level of expertise in some sort of trade or home service. We really encourage you to investigate what it might look like on starting a business around that trade. Maybe you've already started that and you're looking to grow the business or make it easier to manage. And today we really wanted to talk about the benefits of just focusing on momentum. And regardless of how much progress you might be making, any progress is always better than none. Yep. And the word momentum seems to pop up in my mind when I think about working on a goal with my businesses. And so we wanted to kind of riff on that and talk about some of the things you might want to think about when it comes to achieving some of the goals you have in mind. So, but before we get too deep into it, man, how was your week?
The week is good, man. We, all businesses go through phases. Right now is a big phase for us of producing. Right, we're making a lot of content. We're working hard on the courses and being a bit of a perfectionist. So what was supposed to be like a 2-hour course ended up being like a probably 6-hour course, which I feel good about. I feel like we want people to come here. It's the same as podcasts. I want them to, every time they hear us, to feel like the value so far out, like exceeded what they expected. But it was a lot of work. So it's been a very, very busy week, a lot of long nights. And, I remind myself every time that I have a long night that I do these long nights and we have these sprints so that we can have that freedom later on. And I think keeping that perspective helps, especially actually on topic and times momentum, right? Because, when you're on a roll, you want to stay on a roll,
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, and staying consistent with what you're trying to work towards is often what can be the most important thing within the process of achieving our goals. A lot of times we might overestimate the amount of effort needed to achieve this big objective, or we might put too much importance on this goal that we have, and therefore overanalyzing what the next step might be. Yeah. And it can oftentimes hold us back from taking any action at all because we might feel like we're not ready. We might feel like we aren't fully certain on what we need to do. And because of that, we don't want to do the wrong thing. And so we end up doing nothing. And I would say avoid all of that sort of avoidance behavior by just focusing on what the next step is. This comes to mind when actually today I helped some girl, her car broke down in the middle of the road, and I got out and pushed the car. And at first, this thing weighs thousands of pounds, it's heavy as heck. But once you make some momentum, you get some sort of movement, you just focus on putting the next foot in front of the other. And you might be surprised that you are now jogging with this several thousand pound, object you're trying to push. And it all is achieved by focusing on the smallest step and just getting one foot in front of the other. And, it's the exact same mentality with any goal you might have, and specific to business. A lot of our aspirations are pretty ambitious. We have some pretty big goals. And if we try to compare our end result with who we are now or the skills we might have now, it can leave us feeling less than ideal or less than fit for the fight, if you will. So I would encourage anyone listening to just focus on the tiny step, even if it's just create purchase your domain, decide on the business name, or, if you've already done that, maybe build out the website or find someone that can help build out the website, secure your business phone number, file your LLC, whatever it might be. just focus on one little task that can get you closer to the goal. And trust me, you will not regret it. It's going to feel really good when you achieve some of these smaller goals, and it's going to give you plenty of reason to now work on the next one. And you'll find yourself, sometimes this works almost against us as far as mentality, because we get so far into it and it's like, shit, I've done all this work. There's no turning back now. And that's actually good, even though it might feel uncomfortable, because you'll find 6 months from then, a year from then, that you actually achieve this big, audacious goal. And it all started with just taking this tiny little step. And so if you're in the midst of trying to achieve or work towards this goal, sit yourself down and write down what are the things that you need to do, and start with the easiest thing. Start with the easiest task that can help you inch your way towards that goal. And that will increase the likelihood, or in other words, build momentum into achieving the next task. And you keep doing that and you'll end up achieving that big goal.
100%. Yeah. It's so funny because there's kind of three parts that tie into what you just said. A lot of times when we're wanting to make a shift from where we're at to where we're going. And I would say to some degree, even I had this a little bit when we started the podcast. It doesn't matter how far along you are. There is always going to be some little nagging voice in your head, and it's related to your ego. That's like, I'm not good enough. Imposter syndrome it's a real bitch. And, even having had several pretty successful businesses, there's a point where I'm like, wow, why would they want to listen to me? And, or why should this person work with me? Or your mind will come up with creative ways to belittle you and tell you that you're not enough. And the fastest and simplest way to overcome that is literally through action. And I love pushing the car, man. I don't know. They're not very popular anymore. Like, it's very rare. I can't remember the last time I saw somebody with a stick shift. You just don't see them anymore. But my first car was a stick shift. And, there were a few times where, the ignition just quit working. Right. And you're like, oh yeah, well, this car is useless now. But with the stick shift, that's not true. Right. You get it on the road, you start pushing, you run, and literally it's the worst thing in the world, because it was a Suzuki Rodeo. It's like a 4,000 pound car. Pushing that thing was a nightmare. But you get up to a certain speed and you let the clutch go, and boom, it takes off. And the thing is, once it takes off and the car is running, it's a completely different experience than that first little bit when you're pushing it. And for most people starting, the only context you have is pushing the car. And what we're telling you is, yes, it sucks when you're pushing the car, but once you let that clutch go and the thing takes off, it gets to be really great. But the only way that happens is by you. Apparently my dog is very excited about this topic. Yeah. Hey, Matt.
I didn't know if you had some shaky leg syndrome over there.
Well, no, for everybody that can see, we've got Maui. Hey, look here, buddy. We've got Maui here hiding. Yeah, there he is. He is the most gorgeous dog of all time. He's there in front of my computer that is broken. So he apparently loves this topic. But you've got to make the commitment to where pushing becomes worth it. A guy that was a part of an organization I used to work in, he was the first person I ever said. His name is Rory Vaden, and he runs a very, very, very successful coaching company now. He told this story. He's like, you have to be committed. So, there's two guys, they're peeing at a urinal, right? And one guy reaches his hand in his pocket to pull out his phone. And when he pulls his phone out, $5 falls into the urinal. You're obviously not supposed to look, but the guy next to him sees it and he goes, ooh, that's unfortunate. What are you going to do? And the guy, takes his time, finishes, 2 shakes, because 3 is too many, right? Pulls out his wallet, grabs 100 and throws it into the urinal. And the guy next to him goes, dude, what the hell are you doing? And he goes, well, did you think I was going to stick my hand in there for $5? And he reaches in and he grabs the money, right? There's a point at which the level of commitment makes the effort. And there's something really valuable about that. And this is a theme that you'll see again and again. If you've ever read John C. Maxwell's The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, he talks about like the law of the big mo, right? nobody can push it. Like, it's very hard to get a train going up to speed, but once the train's going up to speed, it's almost impossible to stop. Yeah, there's a reason there's those rails. Like, you have to be the train, and that has to be your mindset. Because if you look at like most successful businesses, it's 5, 6, 7, our students are the exception to the rule. Most people I know that start business on their own, they're 5, 6, 7 years in before it really takes off. And it's that commitment. It's the principle of, I'm building this momentum, I'm going to keep going, that makes it possible. That said, I'm not suggesting you should wait 5 years to be successsisu
Right.
In fact, we're telling you how not to be most times on this podcast. You
start 5 years before they're successful. A lot of people have to put in all of that time before they start seeing a business that works without them. And as you pointed out, people are motivated by different things, and giving yourself a good enough reason to take the next step can certainly help. Simon Sinek made famous, discover your why and use that as a reminder. That doesn't always work for some people because they've lived so long within their current circumstances that they are comfortable, may not be the right word, but they're tolerant, they're complacent with where they're at. And so comparing where they're at with where they want to go, and if we falsely focus on all of the effort needed to get there, it might be far too easy to say, I'll do that tomorrow. Or, right now I'm able to sit on the couch and drink beer all day. And so I'm going to do that because it feels a little bit better. Even though I really want to be a millionaire, I also really want to do nothing today.
Right.
And so it's kind of hard to delineate those levels of desire. But I'll tell you, during my kind of building phase of my business, there were many nights where I'm at the shop at 1, 2 in the morning spraying doors, where, I almost took pride in how obsessive and crazy I may have appeared to other people.
I bet you definitely took pride. There's no almost about it.
I would tell myself, who has the balls to do this shit?
Right.
Who is willing to do this stuff? And I will remind I created an identity around working hard. When I saw some of my guys busting their ass and they maybe messed up on some doors, I'm the one that's going to go there and fix it. And I'm not going to tell them about it until the next morning when they realize they're ready for install and they had thought that they were going to have to spray doors all day the next day. Right. I'll go in there in the middle of the night and do it for them because I want to, lead by example in that regard. But I'm almost competitive with myself. I'm competitive with the circumstances that I'm faced with. There were times where people were so unexpectedly or not expecting me to be working at times that I've had guns held up to me at my warehouse because, they're like, oh, there's, who the hell's at his shop at 2 a.m? Like someone's breaking in there. And that's me. It's not, it's me working in the middle of the night. Yeah. And because I did that for years and I built that culture and I built that expectation and I never placed those expectations on people over things that I wasn't willing to do myself, I now don't have to do that. Because I put in all of that work, I laid the bricks, I built that momentum, and now I have a business that can run on its own. But none of this would have happened if I wasn't willing to go through that obstacle and go through all of those days or nights where I rather have just stayed at home drinking or, did anything but, working hard. But for those of you sitting in a similar position that you want to build a business, certainly focus on the reason behind it, make it a big why, but challenge yourself. When your body, I almost was competitive with my own ego. When I would feel myself wanting not to do what I know I should be doing, I push that shit away. I control my head. And if you allow your head to control you, it may not always steer you in the right direction. If you know and you've decided and you've committed to building this business, anything that tries to convince you otherwise, including yourself, you need to push that shit away because it's not going to get you closer to your goal.
Well, and recognizing, all right, so people will have the thought like, I'm tired or I don't want to do this, right? And so if you have the thought, I don't want to do this, and then you decide that you want to do it, it's not the same thing, right? People have thoughts all the time. Like and we don't act on those thoughts, but only when society tells us it's okay. And if you don't believe me, like think about the last time somebody cut you off in traffic. I guarantee you had a thought that's not acceptable to pull out. I have absolutely 100% thought about beating the shit out of people that cut me off, but I would never do that because I'm an adult and I don't fight people, even when they assault me in grocery stores, right? And so, yeah, weird. That was a weird thing. But one of the things that happens is when we're on our own head, and it's not like when there's not the societal constraint of you have to do this, we assume that whatever we hear in our head is somehow this universal truth, and it's not. Right. Your brain, more often than not, for lack of a better way of putting it, your brain is a whiny little bitch that's attached to whatever actions you're doing, and you can either tell it to shut up and go do what needs to be done, or you can give into that. But it's interesting because I know lots of people that when their friends complain, they're like, dude, shut up, I don't want to hear you complain. But when they complain to themselves, they give in, and then they sit on their couch and they don't do shit. And it always sucks worse. When you don't do it, it always sucks worse.
And it builds a biological habit. The easier you give into that sort of mental pressure to not do the things you committed to doing, it builds the snowball effect of it being easier and easier to where you find yourself on the couch and you hate yourself because you're self-sabotaging yourself so much to where you're not even close to the potential that you had. Yep. And when you tell people you're going to do something and you don't do it, or you make a commitment to yourself and you don't do it, it will always feel worse than if you did something that you didn't feel like doing. Yep. It feels amazing when you fight through that mental temptation and you do it anyways. You will never regret it. And the adverse is just as real. When you keep doing that, you build a positive habit and you build a positive feedback loop to where it allows you to and it rewards you to keep putting in that momentum. And then you find yourself doing these hard things that's not even that hard to you. People look at you and be like, dude, you're crazy, I can't believe you're working that hard. It's just a game that you choose to play now. Yes. You are a player in this game and you're just going through the levels. And because you're so good at what you do, you know you're going to get at level 10, even though if you're at level 6. And so if other people or if your brain tries to keep you in level 6, it becomes easier to fight through.
Yeah. Well, and, one of the things I've seen happen, and I went through this personally, so that the first what you would consider highly successful business we ever had that failed. And I watched my net worth go from like 7 figures to -5 figures in a course of like a month. It's like,
that's a test.
Yeah. It was like, wait, what? Where did it go? Why? How did the numbers just disappear? That doesn't make sense. You develop a skill and you're going through and you're putting all this work. And sometimes people, when they're not immediately rewarded with the success, or when they have the success and it's taken away, they lose the habits that got them that success in the first place, or they're like, well, it's just not working for me. But you have to be constantly aware of the fact that success is a combination of opportunity and ability, right? So you have to have the ability to act on the opportunity when it's there. And if because you haven't been given an opportunity yet, you just give up and you stop working, it falls apart. One of my favorite stories, Colonel Sanders, you know how old he was when he successfully sold his chicken business? It's like,
he wasn't young.
He was like 83 and he had approached something like 800 people, right? Like, how many 83-year-olds do you know that will even get off the couch?
Right. They have plenty of reason not to.
Plenty of reason not to. And so the thing is, yeah, you gotta find the reason too, but you also have to accept, like, it doesn't always work out linearly, but if you're not in the peak position to take advantage of the opportunity when it comes, you're going to miss out on it. Or right. If you're closed-minded to the opportunity, and we see this sometimes, this is one of the frustrating things in my mind with the trades is, occasionally we'll talk to people like, man, I've been trying this for years and I don't think it's going to work for me. And I'm like, well, then it's definitely not. You know what I mean? Like, if you're starting your process with this isn't going to work, it's like, yeah, I'm going to paint this house but it's going to look like shit. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, That's actually a good point, and that alone prevents so many people from building momentum within the process of achieving their goals. Is, they look for the reasons why it won't work out, or why they shouldn't do something, or why they can't do something, rather than focusing on the reasons why they can, or how they can, or why they should. It's almost like creating that identity, building an expectation and almost a sense of entitlement that meets effort. That almost becomes a prerequisite to achieving your goals. If you don't think you're going to do something, you're just increasing the likelihood that you're going to be right.
Right.
And if you have the opposite of opinion, you'll have the opposite effect.
The other thing is related to this, and especially with momentum. In my life, the times when I've been focused on an outcome as opposed to a process, I find it significantly harder. For example, if I'm focused on when I get to the gym, how do I bench press 200, and my goal is to get to 250, right? But sets, right? Okay. So if I want to get to 250 and my focus is just on getting 250, anybody that's been working out for a while, to go from 235 at 5 to 250 at 5 is like a several month process. That extra 15 pounds is it's a nightmare. It's a long journey.
Not more than like 15 pounds.
Yeah. If you're just focused on the outcome, like how many sessions a week, if you're doing 1 or 2 sessions a week, you're 6 months in before you're getting there, right? By the time you failed and you haven't gotten your outcome 20 something times, do you still feel good about it? And the answer is no. And so you have to learn how to love and focus on the process. And that state of focusing positively on the process is huge in every part of your business. We were just doing some sales training as part of the course we're getting up. And one of the things I was talking about is when you look at the process of sales, everybody wants the outcome, which is I went in there and they gave me money, right? Or if you're like a really crappy salesperson, and hate to call you guys out contractors, but if you're, Steven, my intention is to give a quote. Like, God, no, right? If your intention is an outcome, that outcome's a sale, and all you're focused on sale, it can also be a really hard experience. So your focus has to be on having a great interaction with the customer, pushing towards a certain outcome. But if you're not consistently focusing on the positive parts of that process, if you're not consistently appreciating and practicing gratitude for the people that you talk to, what happens is you start forming this negative opinion. You're like, oh yeah, all these homeowners, they're just tire kickers, right? And so you write them off. And then the next person you get a potential lead for, you're like, oh, this person's probably a tire kicker anyways. So you don't really give them the attention they deserve. And then they don't really like you that much because you're not trying that hard. And then you don't get the sale. And then guess what? You got to be right. And you're like, I told you it was a tire kicker.
Right. And that becomes their almost a subliminal reward for them. Dude. Secondary, and another reason to blame the customer the next time because they were right the last time.
There's a word for that. There's a term for it. It's secondary
confirmation bias,
secondary benefits, secondary positive outcomes. So it's like, people will have negative behaviors and they get a positive reward from it, even if it doesn't feel positive. Right? So someone stays overweight because they're afraid if they're too attractive, they're going to cheat on their spouse. So overeating has a secondary positive benefit is that they stay in their marriage, even though they don't feel good about themselves. And if we're not conscientious of like our secondary behaviors, like you got to ask yourself, when you're doing something that's stupid or when you're doing something that's bad, it's like, is there any part of me that's like benefiting from this? Or is there any part of me that might be enjoying this or rewarding this? Because we all as humans do it. Like I do it all the time. Like I will stay up late. We played pool the other night till 1 a.m. I definitely should not have done that. Definitely should not have done that. And I know what the positive, I know what the positive second intention was, right? 100%. I wanted to feel like I wasn't controlled by my work because this has been a long week every single night. Right. And it's okay, it's okay to give into those mistakes. We all do it. And that's probably a good thing to mention. Like, as me and Steven are here on our soapboxes, like I can be the first to attest. I screw up all the time.
Right. There's a difference with being aware of it, though. You
Yeah.
know, just like you confessed,
Yeah.
this now, you expressing that opens up the door of opportunity to make it a lesson. And so the next time you get tempted to play pool at 1 a.m, you'll probably put a little bit more consideration or contemplation on that decision.
Won't be doing it again. It made for a horrible following day. It made for a horrible
right. Or if you do it, make sure, your circumstances align that make it okay in a way.
Yeah.
If it's on a weekend and you got a bunch of shit done, then but if there's a super long to-do list and you've ignored that to-do list 3 days in a row, and then one last rebel against your priorities is playing pool up till 1 a.m, then it's probably not so
great. Probably not so great. Well, and you're right. It's the awareness, right? Because when you recognize the problem, whether it's a positive second benefit or whether it's just a straight negative behavior, like if we're not consciously aware of these things and tying it back in, like the reason we want to be aware of these things is because we have to be able to focus on a process that enables us to build momentum.
Right.
That's what it is. It may happen right now when you get that success. It may happen later, but the momentum is what's going to give you the skill set to be able to take that on. And you've got to be aware of these things. You absolutely have to be aware of these things, because if not, you will stay stagnant. And if you're not growing, you are dying.
Yeah, unfortunately, inflation of productivity is real. And, if you're not constantly increasing your productivity, the amount of effort you might put in today might produce less results tomorrow. Oh, yeah. So constantly creating systems that may not require you to constantly, nailing nails all night, but, building that foundation will help you get to the next level. And you'll be working hard in different ways. But, as Wilson pointed out, as you're building momentum, having a reason why you do everything and putting a positive focus on the positive productivity you're creating is going to allow you to have enough incentives, and it's going to create a positive feedback loop to make going after it the next day a little bit easier. And every time you fight through that internal resistance, or every time you're aware of a slight mishap or a misdirection you may have started going down, every time you're aware of that and you self-correct, you're reprogramming yourself into the person that you're able to be. And you do that over time, and you reward yourself and acknowledge yourself for the momentum and the productivity you're creating. You're going to find yourself 6 months, 12 months down the road, and maybe even be in disbelief over how much you've achieved. And you'll very well find yourself being a new person for very much a better version of yourself, because you're slowly carving away the bad habits, and you're introducing and forming and developing new habits.
Yep.
And you're going to find yourself, momentum is just something that you automatically do. And when you have a goal, you achieve it. And you may not know exactly how it's going to play out, but after you've done this a few times and you've achieved the things you've gone after, now you're identifying yourself as a person that achieves what they seek. What you work towards, you will eventually, get there. And you proved that to yourself a couple of times. It will be easier and easier to achieve your goals, because you're not starting from a place of disbelief or a feeling of not being worth whatever you're aspiring towards. You're going to start your new goal with a much better frame of mind. Yep. And much more references to now point to as a way to give you reasons why you will achieve your goal, because you're the type of person that does that. And it's not that it's going to be a smooth road, but you already know that you are able to overcome some of these obstacles. You've done it in the past, and you'll do it in the future.
100%. We have a tool. It's on the website. We'll post a link to it in this podcast. If you've never taken the time to actually sit down and figure out why you do what you do, especially, and I don't mean like I go to the gym to get fit. I mean, like, your actual driving force, because the reality is I don't go to the gym just go fit. I go to the gym because I'm planning on having kids one day, and I'm going to be like 60 and run circles around those little bastards. Like I've committed to that. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it, right? There's a degree to which you have to have a really strong why. And
Yep.
for me, I grew up in a very small town, deep South. Like getting super deep and emotional was considered weird. Just is what it is. So do this exercise by yourself, but there's a guide that will take you through outlining what your driving force is. And there's nothing wrong with, getting deep and being honest with yourself. Like, hey, if your driving force is your family, if your driving force is, spreading the word of God, if your driving force is, helping people that are homeless, I really don't care what your driving force is. But if you don't know what that is, if you can't honestly say what's causing you to take your actions, I do care about that, because that means you're aimless.
Right.
And I'll put that in the downloads. I'll put that in the downloads for people, because it's a good exercise. Everybody should know.
Awesome. Well, I really hope that gave you guys some inspiration, some reason to double down on what you already know you're supposed to do. Many of us already know the next step, or at least something that can get us closer to our goal. And we're just putting too much emphasis on the reasons not to take action. So I really encourage you to re-listen to this episode, and hopefully it will shine a light on some of the things that ring true to you and give you a reminder of what you already know. And so really, sit down. If you haven't done this already, sit down, write down what you're trying to achieve, and list out some of your thoughts on things that you could do to help you get there. And just start with the easiest thing. When you achieve and you knock out that task, it's going to be easier to now make progress on the next one.
Amen to that.
Well, with that said, guys, I really wish you a great rest of the week. Do whatever you can to inch a little bit closer towards your goals. And we'll meet here, same place, same time next week. If there's anything we could do for you guys, shoot us over an email at support@cabinetstartup.com. We'd be happy to give you some help. Talk to you guys soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.